Hello, my name is Logan Steese, and this is activity 7.1. It's a mock interview, so we'll just jump right into it. Question one is, what do you see as the most critical and current threats affecting software security? So the top three threats that we're seeing right now is broken access control, cryptographic failures, and injection attacks. And these are all pulled directly from the top 10 OWASPs web application vulnerabilities. The broken access control deals with users having the ability to access certain things of a system that they don't need. This goes against everything least privilege, the principle of least privilege stands for. Cryptographic failures. This we're seeing a lot of software that, whether the data is at rest or in transit, there's no encryption that's applied, and just plain text is being transmitted. And the last one, and my favorite, is injection. Injection attacks really hammer the software because you're able to achieve malicious results from the software, and you're able to make the software do things it wasn't necessarily designed for. What online resources do you use to keep abreast of software security issues? Can you give an example of recent software security vulnerability or threat? So to tackle the first part of this question, I use a multiple outlets for this type of information. First things first, I subscribe to MSISAC, and they push out, application vulnerabilities before, they're really publicly disclosed because it's a government organization. I also listen to various podcasts and, they all focus on security as well as penetration testing. The last one that I rely on is I just go and look at most up-to-date CVEs. You filter by date and see what's out there and see what's, what of your inventory is affected. And can I give a example of a vulnerability or a threat? Yes. So pretty much every other week, all web browsers come out with a buffer overflow attack. And, whether it's Chrome, Edge, Firefox, they all have them. And just about every week, one's discovered. Question 3, what do you see as challenges to successfully implementing a secure Sdlc? So Sdlc is short for software development lifecycle, and it's a whole process of developing software. So some challenges to successfully implementing this is, one, it's very costly to do this. It requires a lot of man hours to properly design software, based around security and then usability. And companies now are taking their chances and just wanting to cut corners and whatnot. And that's what we're kind of seeing. So I would say that one of the biggest challenges is it all comes down to money. Question 4, what is your definition of the term cross-site scripting? What is the potential impact on servers and clients? So cross-site scripting, otherwise known as XSS, if you'll see on a computer shorthanded, it's just the ability to run scripts, on a web page that are then ran on that the server that hosts the web page's server. The potential impact on servers and clients, we are able to compromise servers, and then you're able to compromise clients. You're able to, exfiltrate data if you need to, and, you're able to potentially spread more malware. So both of those have a direct impact on servers and clients. And on top of that, it also has a direct impact on your company. Question 5, what are the most important steps you would recommend for securing a new web server or web application? So we'll start with a web server first. First things first, the operating system of your server needs to be up to date and in life cycle. You can't be running Windows 7 and using that as your web server. So make sure that whatever operating system you go with is in lifecycle, and you're able to regularly receive security updates from the manufacturer. On top of that, you also need to make sure that the users that need to have access to that system, least privilege is implemented. Now, web application, I'm going to rely back on OWASP's top 10. You need to make sure that, access control is taken care of, data in transit and at rest is encrypted, and make sure that, you go through and use all of like some stored procedures. That way you don't open up yourself for some injection attacks. All right, moving on. Question 4 or 6, sorry. You are engaged in a penetration test where you are attempting to gain access to a protected location. You're presented with this login screen. What are some examples of how you would attempt to gain access? Well, if this is all we see, hopefully maybe it would have like a model number of whatever we're trying to log into, or some sort of information of that. And we can go, look on Google for default credentials. Maybe, this wasn't fully configured correctly and it's still utilizing default credentials. The next thing that I would try is just, let's try a SQL injection and see what it gets. We'll just put in or 1 = 1 and see what it returns. Outside of that, we could throw it some, non-standard characters and see how it reacts. And hopefully if there's any error handling, if there's poor error handling, we may be able to see a little bit about the server. Question 7. What application generated the log file entry below? What type of attack is this? Assuming the index PHP program is vulnerable, was this attack successful? So I would go ahead and say that this is most certainly a weblog. We can tell by, we've got a fully qualified domain name. We're also using HTTP as the protocol. PHP is generally seen for, web applications and so forth. And on top of that, most obviously, we're using Firefox as the agent. So that's definitely what generated the log. Now, what type of attack is this? Well, first thing that jumps out to me is, we're using the post function of PHP and we're trying to post to index.php. So what it looks like is we're trying to overwrite something in the index.php file. And down here, we can see that the owns.p5.org, maybe that could be it. I'm not sure. Actually, let's back up. So we are trying to post to this and we're trying to list the username of anything. So going back up here to the access denied, pattern match username, that's a Linux command, \x20 tac a. This is a Unicode escape character, not escape character, but it's a encoded character. I forget of what, but it's actually the space. So this attack was not successful. It does look like a cross-site scripting attack, or maybe like a command injection attack. Because we can see that it's trying to, pass commands right here. Trying to change the directory to the temp file. That's how we know that this is a Linux server. Trying to use the ID command. I forget what that does off the top of my head. But then we're trying to list the username of everyone. So no, this attack was not successful, but I do know that it was a command injection attack. All right. Question 8. One of your web servers is logging multiple requests similar to the following. We got an IP address, we got a timestamp, we've got put. Put is different than post. So put tries to replace, or the put function of PHP is used for replacing files. So this IP address is trying to replace this. Microsoft data access, internet publishing provider, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So what does this log entry indicate, and how could you identify the context of hack.htm file that the attacker is trying to upload? Well, first things first, this is not the full log. This is, I think this is just the header, because if we reflect back on the last one, yeah. So that's just the request. So first things first, we're going to need to look at the full log to be able to determine anything. And then by looking at that, we should be able to determine what the attacker is trying to do with this file. You know, if it's trying to do it consecutively multiple times a second, you know, maybe we could set something up that, like a honeypot, where it allows the attacker to write to it in a controlled environment, and then we're able to see what that attacker does. All right, number 9. I'm feeling good. You've been asked to review the source code for a compiled script that is being used to validate logon credentials for a web application. The file is called logon_validate, and a typical logon request looks like this: get logon validate. Okay. Source code is below. Just when I said we're feeling good, we're not. I'm not a programmer. Do you see any problems with this code? How could the attacker exploit this code to bypass the authentication mechanism in this script? What are some mitigation options? So first things first, there's a couple things that jump out at me. So this right here, I'm not a programmer, but if I saw this in my URL, I'd start attacking this first. You know, I would try and see if we couldn't get either the password for specific usernames or the usernames for specific passwords. So generally what we could do is, you know, we could put an admin and then, you know, put nothing in there for password and see if it authenticates us. So I would first initially go after this right here and see what we could and could not get away with. Second thing that I see that jumps out at me is that these are some hard-coded limits for username and passwords. So the character name as well as the username and the password look like it's limited to 128 bits, 129 if we're using zero-based indexing. I'm not sure, but maybe something we can do with this is a buffer overflow attack. You know, write something out of bounds. So let's look at the get username from query string snippet. I don't see any. There's no error handling that I can detect in either of these. Yeah, I mean, that's judging by my non-programmer eyes. There's no error handling, so we'd be able to pass various symbols and whatnot, and maybe a couple commands. Okay, so first things first, what I would do is use input validation for the username and password. That way we couldn't pass you know, commands of some sort. I would maybe convert this to a string. I'm not familiar with char, but it's maybe one thing I would do. And then right here, we need to have some proper error handling. So if the error on authentication equals 0. We're good. If not, show error. This is going to show the error and it's going to tell you what's wrong. So you may be able to get server information. It may tell you, oh, just the username's wrong, or oh, just the password's wrong. So we can't be having that. All right. So let's see. Is that it? That was my interview. Please hire me. Have a good one.